Hi, welcome everybody. Brian Anderson. This is Paint by Numbers Real Estate. Today is a case study call with one of our members, and I'm just going to ask this person, I'm going to introduce him first, and I'm going to ask several questions, and I'll just let him talk based on what makes sense, and you guys can ask questions as well, and then I will facilitate those questions to our guest. So I seeded it with a few things to kind of make the conversation flow. And I will be honest, all this is fresh and unscripted. I didn't get together for 2 hours and rehearse what to say or anything like that. This is all designed to be completely raw, completely real, to fit what we're doing. So, with that being said, I welcome you guys to the call, and I thank so many of you for being here. Why a case study? So first and foremost, the reason we do case study calls is everybody likes to know they're on the right track or they're not going alone. The whole reason we do script testing and all the split testing is because we don't know what works until you test it. Nobody does. And the only people that say that are usually wrong or they're lying or whatever it may be. So it's important to model after what works. And I know that all of you, like myself and like our guest, have kind of been around the block, so to speak. You've been engaged in various marketing programs or different niches. The point today with real estate is it's a niche that's different than almost any other one. And I think what's exciting about it is the sheer quantity of agents and brokers that are out there. It's just astronomical, like we've gone through the program. And they're hungry for help and for business. And they all want to succeed because they're chasing their dream. And at the end of the day, we're facilitating their success, which makes it all the more rewarding. So with no further ado, let me introduce Steve Johnson. Steve, are you there by chance?
I am.
Awesome. Well, listen, Steve, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking your time to be live. And I know Steve and I were just chatting. He's up in Minnesota, and we were talking about how bloody cold it is. So Kristen Bedard just said, ask Steve if he's cold. So I suspect the answer to that is yes, but Steve's a tough guy, so he'll probably say no. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of good feedback, Steve. Brian Morrow said Steve's my hero, and lots of good feedback here. Guys, let me turn this over to Steve. So, Steve, what I want to do is let me put this up. With your permission, I put a few points up, and there's a shot of you and your kids. I know you're a big sports family because I see a lot of your stuff on Instagram and Facebook, and I saw you shooting basketball. Your youngest son shooting basketball, I think, the other day. And tell us more about your business, maybe your personal life. Did you grow up in Minnesota? Tell us a little bit more about the guy behind the Steve Johnson myth, so to speak.
Well, so I grew up in Minnesota. I was born here. Started in the cities and kind of moved out to the suburbs over time. Married, 3 kids, love them to death, but they're so crazy, keep me super busy, which is why I can't work for anyone else, quite frankly. They've got me running in different directions all over the place. So both of the boys play football and basketball. Looks like they're going to start lacrosse this year. My daughter is a little dancer and gymnastics and all that fun stuff, and also gets in with jiu-jitsu with my boys. So that's the kids, I guess. They're pretty awesome. So
yeah, I enjoy seeing your stuff. A lot of people who post about their kids, and it's cool kind of keeping up like with different people who I know who you are and we know each other, but it's not like we're hanging out and getting a beer. But I kind of feel like, and kind of the way Facebook connects everybody together, you kind of know what's up. And when I see your son dominating or shooting basketball, and I'm thinking, man, I'm on the way to basketball right now. And a lot of us, Kristen with softball. I know Kristen's 2 daughters are big into softball. And all of us, whether it's kids or business or other things, we all have similar goals. I mean, obviously money is great, but at the end of the day, why? And I take it that your why is your wife and your children and really your lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, being able to spend time with them and raise them up and show them, just a different way to be able to do it. I was kind of blessed as a young man. I grew up in a family business, sitting, next to my uncle or my grandpa when they're making buying decisions as CEOs and presidents. So it's been a very, very good experience for me, and to be able to see that there is something else out there. You don't have to just be the 9 to 5 or 40 or 50 hours a week in a cube. I mean, for me, quite frankly, I can't sit in a cube or a desk for very long and be effective anyway. So yeah, that's definitely the goal, is to let them start playing around and seeing what's available from, just a value proposition. Bring value to the marketplace, find a need and fill it, and you can work for yourself instead of for someone else. So, and obviously being able to go and do the sports is just great to be able to watch them. So, I don't know, a little bit more about me. From there, I work with a lot of local businesses. The verticals that I work in are pretty random. Random is probably not the best word. They're very different. So from real estate and mortgage to, we've got some child care facilities, we've got some automotive that we've worked with. Obviously the dental and chiropractic type practices we've done a lot of work with in the past and continue to do so. We're even doing some reactivation of inactive patients right now using voice drops. So that's pretty exciting. I've worked with the trades. I have a number of clients in the trades. I have some business interest in the trades. Yeah, I mean, it's all over the board.
No, I love it. And is there any one niche, or for you, do you kind of thrive on that whole diversity, not doing one thing and having lots of different fires going on, irons in the fire, so to speak? Or is there one? And I know we're gonna talk about real estate, obviously today, but let me just segue into it. So, Steve, knowing that you do, I mean, you were doing pretty well in automotive. You do a lot in these other niches. What first attracted you to real estate? And unlike a lot of people, you actually went on and got your license as an agent, right?
I did, yeah. So real estate, one of the things that attracted me to real estate is that, again, kind of randomly, I had a real estate broker who does well, who treats his business like a business, approached me for some SEO work, and I was kind of amazed. I was under the same impression that a lot of other people are probably under, that real estate agents are broke. And don't get me wrong, some of them are broke, like dead broke, but some of any industry are, right? The people who do well in real estate, the people who treat it like a business instead of just a sales job, do extraordinarily well. And so when I got opened up to that, and I had him refer some people over, and then started working with some friends who were in real estate and seeing how little they knew about how to actually generate leads, right? So you don't go to real estate school and have them tell you, hey, your job is going to really be dependent on the number of leads that you can generate. You go to school, and when you go through the training, they're talking about the contracts, they're talking about the different types of properties, the different laws that are involved, the technical part of doing real estate. And so I think a lot of people see the low barrier to entry and get into it and don't have a clear understanding of what their daily process is really going to look like. And so being able to implement some of these systems to generate leads, people that they can talk to about buying or selling a home, just made so much sense. I saw guys that were doing fairly well who weren't utilizing any of these systems yet. And by implementing them, we've been able to go ahead and increase and improve the number of homes that they're able to transact each year. So a couple of years of helping real estate agents and seeing how big their checks were from the work that we were doing, but not being able to get a real piece of it because they couldn't pay me per job. They couldn't pay me per sale because I wasn't licensed, prompted me to get licensed. I just had a conversation with someone about it this morning. The barrier to entry is relatively low. It's 90 hours of training, several tests that you got to go, have proctored tests, and then finding a broker that wants to take you on, and then paying that broker monthly, whether it's a percentage or a flat fee or both. And so it just really, from a business perspective, it doesn't cost very much. I mean, I don't know what you guys had into the auto dealership, but when you guys picked up the auto dealerships, I'm sure there was a much larger barrier to entry than there was for
it was Buck 50, 200K, I think.
Yeah,
And this is for just a dirt lot with some cars. And yeah,
right.
I mean, it's definitely a higher barrier to entry for sure, but both are very lucrative. You're right. You sell a house for 400K. What's a typical commission nowadays a realtor gets? Is it
If you get
6%?
one side, yeah, if you get one side, so typically in Minnesota, anyways, more often than not, you're going to get one side of the deal. So that's going to be 3% or 3.3%. So call it 12 grand.
Yeah.
Um,
So ideally, if you can get to the point where you're closing as a realtor, if they're closing 2 deals a month,
you can do pretty well.
regardless, and I know California is the big bucks. I see David Perkins here, but California may be the big bucks. But even a modest, 2 to 400,000 dollar price point, that's a lot of money for me, for anybody.
Yeah, yeah. And the reality is the amount of skill that you need is very, very minimal once you've gotten through it, right? Not to say that you don't need to know a lot of things, but once you get through the training and get out there and do a few transactions, you can work competently. It's not, you don't need 8 years of medical school to be able to do it, but you can definitely out earn doctors.
Yeah, I imagine so, especially with doctors' malpractice and other costs, it goes
Right.
up. Well, let me ask you this. So, from a lead standpoint and from a marketing services standpoint to realtors, what's a typical day like for you? Are you using voice drops to drive front end traffic? Are you using it to fulfill? Are you doing email marketing? Are you doing PPC? What do you do in a typical day that kind of fills the funnel and leads you towards new business, so to speak?
So picking up new real estate clients or picking up new buyers and sellers.
We can talk about both. So
Okay.
I don't want to
So
rule one out. They're both good.
if I'm going after selling marketing services, voice drops, and lead generation to a real estate agent, the only thing that I use at this point is voice drops, because I get such a high response. It's so
Yeah, yours is through the roof, man. I read your stuff, and I mean, obviously it comes down to the nuance, but Steve, it's incredible, and small drops, high results, and not well. And I'll come back to that caller ID question. I made a slide about it, but the amount of calls, and you spend a couple hours just kind of dealing with the calls and sifting through it, so to speak.
hmm yeah. And for what it's worth, I'm not even super consistent. I really probably should be more consistent. It's not something that I've automated and had someone else take on yet, although I have had that conversation with a salesperson for this specific product. But the reality is that you spend hours taking return phone calls from a 10-minute drop. I mean, legitimately, there's a lot of people coming through. Now, I take all of them back. So even people who haven't heard it, and I just redirect them. I mean, those guys are gold. Like if they're giving you 3 minutes or a minute and a half to talk, there's no reason, from my perspective, that I shouldn't have that conversation, right? Because they're my target audience. They're real estate agents. You know, from there I have to figure out and qualify them. Are they real estate agents that are doing some business, or are they just real estate agents that do 5 or 10 transactions a year?
Yeah,
Um,
are they hobbyists that make 30, 40K, or are they really in the business to win it kind of thing?
right. And the reality is it's 10 or 15% that are in that mode where they're out trying to build an active, large real estate practice. Um, so it's, that's what my day looks like for something like that. Call it a 4-hour process, and my phone keeps ringing. I've got a separate line that I use just for it. Um, and, I walk around with a couple different cell phones, unfortunately. But that phone will go off for 2 days after the drop with people trying to reach out to me. Um, the reality is a lot of them end up going to voicemail because as much as I try to drop them as slow as possible, if they call back later and I'm in the middle of something, I don't get to them. So that's
That's
a
just
day
the
in my life.
reality. The reality is, if you have 18 calls coming back, you may not catch them all.
Yeah. So
I mean, I know it's hard to imagine that if somebody's calling you guys about missing it, but it happens. Like we probably took between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. today, maybe 16 calls here, and a bunch of good ones. But as they were coming in, I heard other ones come in that went to voicemail. And the reality is, we're probably going to get to those tomorrow morning. Someone will call them back. the probability on those are going to decrease dramatically, but that's okay.
Yep.
We took the ones that were there, and there was 3 of us, and we kind of split them up. Sean was here, and then Tracy and myself. But let me ask you a question that's on a lot of people's minds. Speaking of calls, a lot of people ask about, do you only take the ones that listen to the message and call that number, or do you take the caller ID? Now, I take both, Steve, but you may have a secret sauce that makes it really hum. Any thoughts on that?
No, I take all the calls back. Again, if they're the target market, right, which is what I upload into the system. I mean, all the numbers are for real estate agents. If they're my target market, I want to talk to them.
Yeah.
So I take all the calls back. The reality is that the people who haven't heard the message, you can tell, or you can generally tell. They'll say, "Hey, I just missed a call from you," or "Hey, you just left me a message, and I'm calling back." Which is awesome. At that point, I say, "Hey, did you listen to the message?" If I can't tell right off the bat that they didn't, and they tell me yes or no. If they tell me no, they haven't listened to it. It's a simple process. Well, here, let me tell you what I was calling about, and I literally just go into what I said in the voicemail. The message is still the same.
When you're taking calls, like, we don't use a third-party service. I know some people do. Like, I know Lisa Curry's had success with Jill's Office and similar products. For me, especially on calls that are coming back that didn't play the message, I want to be able to take them so I can kind of pivot, engage, where they're at, and see if they're really an opportunity or not. Do you take them yourself, or do you use like let's call it a service or an answering or a screening service to take initial calls?
No, I take them myself, which is why I'm inconsistent with how often I do it, right? Because I've got a lot of other balls in the air. But the reality is that if I'm going to close 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 of the people calling back, I can take 4 hours and make $500.
Yeah, a couple of people. Gail just asked, "What's the message that you use?" You guys, Steve's scripts. If you look in the course, they're in the members area of Voice Drops and the PBN course. 2 of the 3 winning scripts were Steve's. One was an open house script that was really good, Gail, and another one talks about Rosemont. I can't remember the whole script, Steve, but it was a good message. Now, obviously you use the open house script when you're talking about an open house, but do you find you prefer one over the other, or do you use them both?
We use them both. They're for different things. So, and those are both realtor messages, meaning that the realtor, our client, would use those, or I use them myself, quite frankly. I'm not going to lie. When I'm looking for real estate business. So that's the difference, right? When I'm going out to get clients for my business that are realtors who I want to sell voice drops to, we use something different than the approach for going out and finding people to list their home, or renters who want to buy a home. Both of them work. I've had success with both. We've got customers from both. And it's fairly basic right now, and I'll just speak on the Minneapolis market, but it's pretty consistent nationally. Not every market is going to be the same, but there's not enough houses on the market. Our population keeps growing. The interest rates are low. It's better for people to buy than to rent at this point. Minneapolis, the Twin Cities area, the interest rates would have to go to 9% for it to make sense for them to, for a renter to rent instead of buy. And anyone that's been looking knows that we're at like 4% right now. There's a long ways to go. The numbers that the local realtor association just put out is it's going to be 4 years at the current building rate, which is a lot, for it to catch up. There's only 2.8 months worth of inventory on the market right now in the Twin Cities. 4 months is considered a seller's market. So you can see there's a lot of stuff going on. So when you put this message out to people have kind of heard that it's kind of a seller's market. The home prices are going up. Most markets are steadily moving 2 to 5%. When you put that into perspective, on a $300,000 house, that's $15,000 in additional equity that a homeowner would have. So a lot of people are starting to look up and say, hey, should I be moving up? So we put those messages in front of them and say, listen, there's not enough houses on the market. There's a lot of buyers out there. If you've been considering buying, or excuse me, selling your home, or just want to know how much it's worth in today's market, give me a call because we might already have a buyer for your house. Every part of that is absolutely legitimate. You know, I happen to the broker that my license is with has like 400 agents, and I guarantee you there's buyers. People have them waiting in the wings, even if your specific realtor client might not. So.
Yeah, Roger Weaver, who you know is also an agent over in Maryland, he said, add to what Steve said, another 20,000 needed for a buyer at the higher rates. So, you know, in terms of money, I guess, to get into those homes when the rates go up. So,
One of the other things that you look at, a lot of people don't realize that the first-time home buyers generally have programs. You know, there are programs that can make it literally less to get into a house, a couple $1,000 down, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, to be able to get your down payment taken care of. People think you have to have 20% down. Well, the reality is it's just not the case. I mean, is it good to have 20% down? Sure. But do you have to? No. There are programs out there for first-time home buyers that, you know, if you take into account, you know, first and last month's rent and a security deposit, it literally costs less to get into a home of your own than to rent.
no, I completely get it. I remember there was, what do they call it? FHA. There's all programs where you can get in with
Sure.
just a couple $1,000s. And,
Yeah.
and the reality is now you're building equity, and everybody at some point, has that dream of either owning their own house or, like you said, move up to a bigger house. All
Mm-hmm.
right, Steve, let me ask you, and I'll preface this before I ask it. On the how much do you charge? There's been like 8 people ask it.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, Steve's pricing is how we based the whole program is based around Steve's pricing. And I will tell you that our team is using Steve's pricing here almost verbatim. And the proposal we uploaded, available for you guys, is also using Steve's pricing. But Steve, you want to talk about the 3 buckets that you would charge realtors? Because there's a lot of interest in that, because people are, there's always uncertainty about, am I leaving money on the table? Am I overcharging, et cetera? What do you think on that?
Well, so I actually just rolled out new pricing
There you
to charge them more, and I position it just a little bit different. So I was at $299, gets you a 2-week deal, and like $399 gets you a month worth. I used it as kind of a fallback. Hey, a lot of people don't want the long-term commitments that you get from like Zillow and Trulia, where they want you to sign on for a year, and you're stuck no matter what, whether it works or not. You're going to be paying them. So understanding that, we put together a 2-week trial. Well, our pricing was the $299, and then going into a monthly. We've changed it to $399 and saying, listen, we've got a 3-month package for $14.97. I mean, they're only getting like 1,500 drops a month. So the reality is, I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot to generate massive amounts of phone calls for these guys. They're just not used to getting that many calls from people who are potentially prospects. Most of the leads they're generating nowadays are online anyways. They come with bad phone numbers. They still have to pay $20 to $50 a piece. In better markets or in bigger, higher price range markets, it's higher. It's $90 a lead from Zillow in some zip codes. And so the reality is if they put in a fake phone number, which is going to happen on those leads quite a bit. A substantial number of them are going to have that. They're just not talking to many people. People aren't reaching out to them by phone. And so this allows them to be able to get quite a lot of inbound calls and have lots of conversations with homeowners or potential buyers. And so at that $399 range, I mean, you're coming in less than Zillow by far. Some Zillow Premier agents are spending upwards of $1,000 to $10,000 depending on what their plans are. But most of these agents are looking at it and going for $400 or $300 or whatever it is, whatever price you choose there. It just makes sense for them to try it out as long as you're upfront with them and say, listen, it's not for everyone. If you're only planning on selling 5 or 6 homes this year, it's not for you. But at the end of the day, that's the pricing. It used to be $299 for the 2-week one. Now it's $399 for the 2-week one, or $14.97 for 3 months. And what I do is I use that to kind of push people down to the trial.
Yeah, nice, nice. Yeah, and so our goal on our team is, we shoot for that 450 to 550 price point because for us, there's plenty of margin. We're making a nice sum there, and people are willing to pay it based on what Zillow and obviously when they acquired Trulia and then Realtor.com. We haven't had a pricing issue. I don't have pricing as a primary objection. Do you have people, at least people that are serious? Do you have people that say I just can't afford it? And if so, what do you do to those guys?
Well, first off, no, I generally don't have people say that. Um, so no, and would I try to convince them? I wouldn't. There's too many of them out there. Like if they're in their mind, if you're having to fight with them to get a deal done, it's just move on to the next. Like there's so many. There's 2 million plus realtors out there, and we know up front that 80 or 90% of them are probably not the best fit for it. So
Hey,
if they're
Steve.
truly, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. A few people asked if you could repeat your modified pricing, how you changed the trial, you raised the price. If you could go over that, Kristen and Brian were asking questions about that.
Yeah, so it's we offer a 3-month package at $499 a month. We haven't paid up front. It's $1,497. Gets them 3 months. Um, there's obviously a 6-month option for it as well. I don't do an annual one because in the Twin Cities, like the market's super different from spring. From like now until August will be crazy, and then September, October, November, December slow down. Um, Not as much a lot of people think. It's a great time to use it, but a lot of agents kind of have it in their head that it does, and so it's just not an objection I want to play with. Um, so that one is the same pricing, goes for 6 months. But I use them to push them down to the 399 trial, which is 750 drops. It's 6 days of 125 drops, and that's spread out over 2 weeks. So, and I load it up that way. So I pick Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 10 a.m. and have them clear their schedule for the next 2 hours.
So guys, as you start to see success, you could very easily raise the price of that first package just like Steve did. Some of you may need to do it right away because you can.
Yep.
But I know a lot of you are tentative. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. The reality is that price is so inexpensive, and as long as you build value, it's not about the price. Whether they make a decision is more about how they connect with you and how you represent yourself, and less about the price. So let me move on to the next thing, and we'll come back. There's some good questions. Objection handling. So what would you say, Steve? Biggest objection you get, regardless of experienced or inexperienced agent, is there one objection that you just get all the time?
Yeah, sure. That they don't pay for leads, and they probably don't. And so I don't try to overcome it. I say, hey, I appreciate your time. Do you know anyone that's still trying to build their business? If someone's living comfortably, making $100,000 plus a year off of referral business, I'm not going to try to convince them they need to make life changes. That doesn't make sense. They're used to and are going to probably continue to get referrals from their 500-person circle, and they don't want to change, and that's fine. But what you're looking for aren't those people. You're looking for the people who want to go out and do something big in 2017. They're like, you know what? I'm sick of only making $80,000 a year. I want to blow this up. Those are the ones you want, and they're out there. You just got to talk to them to find them. So I don't try to overcome that objection. I say thanks, ask them for a referral.
Yeah, like Brian Morrow just said, so you don't buy leads. That's phenomenal. Do you know any agents that actually, Brian said, do you know any agents that actually have game? So,
well, and
no,
here's
at the end of the
the
day,
reality. Some of these guys, they've been doing it for 15, 20 years. They've got their circle, and every year they do 40 transactions from referrals. I mean, maybe they don't want to have to hire an assistant. Maybe they don't want to have to do these things because they live comfortably, make $100,000 to $150,000 a year. I mean, that's the reality, is that this industry, there's a portion of this industry that does really, really well without working a ton.
And I think that's the dream that most agents are chasing, but
Hmm.
they got to put in the legwork or they'll never get to that point.
True story.
And it's the same in marketing, guys. The difference between some of you that don't have any clients and say Steve that's had a lot of success is Steve's put in the work. When you put in the work and you hone it and you refine that skill and you land clients and you learn from what you did right and wrong, you're only going to get better. So anybody else right now that had an objection, kind of yeah, here's a good one from Henry, Steve. So when you first get a call back, what's the first thing? What do you say to them? Is what Henry's asking. What's the first thing that you say to the customer or the
So,
prospect at that point?
sure. So when a real estate agent calls me, I literally just answer the phone. Hey, this is Steve. And they let me know whether they've listened to it for the most part. Again, I might have to ask them, but for the most part, it's either, hey, you know what, I got your message. This is a great time to be taking on listings. And I cut them short a little bit and say, hey, you know what, that's awesome. Let me tell you a little bit more about why I was calling. We actually generate inbound calls for real estate agents from homeowners who have some interest in potentially selling their home or finding how much it's worth. Would getting 7 to 15 calls a day be useful for you? And then I just stop. I let them tell me. If they say no, I go, oh, awesome. How do you generate your leads? And a lot of them will say, you know what, it's through referrals, or they'll say, I don't think that this is the way that I want to do it. I don't want to commit that much time. Again, when I tell you guys, like, I've got buddies that are doing $100,000+ a year in real estate who play golf 4 days a week. So some of them don't want to have to take phone calls, and that's fine. They're just not the ones you want to talk to. Ask them for a referral. Hey, do you know someone that just got in the business? Hey, do you know someone who's trying to build a team? Well, to build a team, you got to have leads coming in.
So Ken asked a good question, Ken Lingle. He said, Steve, do you land clients on the first call, or is it a follow-up process? You kind of determine who's really hot, and then you follow up, or is it a one-call close for you?
Both. I've had several one-call closes where people just make the decision. They're like, yeah, dude, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. How does it work? What do you need from me? Like, and that's the thing. I mean, again, we've got so many of them that we can talk to, and the ones that aren't a good fit only take 90 seconds of your time. I mean, I like those ones. That said, there are some people who want more information. There are some people who are thinking of buying for more than one agent, and so they want to find out more about it. There are some people who will give you and I look at it as an objection. Hey, can you send me an email? Well, sure, but am I really going to get you more information in an email? Probably not. I mean, what kind of questions do you have? What answers can I get for you? And then we just kind of keep on talking. I don't know. I might have a knack for keeping people on the phone when they've given me a funny objection like that I just don't believe is real. And so we talk through it or just steamroll over it and ask for the sale. Hey, here's the next step. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get you a tracking number. What is the best, or usually before I say the tracking number, I'll ask them what the zip codes are that they'd want to work in. So it gets them kind of owning it. And every agent should know their zip codes off the top of their head. So they know where they want to be.
Let's see.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that was excellent. Roger Weaver just said, and remember, Roger's an agent as well, guys. There's so much anecdotal information just in the Facebook group and what we've done and successfully with tests, etc. Roger says it should be really easy to sell. Just need to package the results to date and put it in front of somebody. I will tell you that if you get on the phone, and I learned this firsthand, Sean and I, as we added real estate to the mix, we started saying this, and I'll tell you it's a mistake. We started in talking about a software that helped generate leads for realtors. Are you interested? Right? Something to that effect, right? Let me tell you what a debacle that was. Saying leads for realtors is the fastest turnoff I think I've seen. It was like, how fast can I get them to hang up on me, right? But doing what Steve talked about, we actually wrote I actually wrote some things down, and we're going to do a call on a little bit of it next week. But guys, our script, which is an unscript, it's just some key points that we say, and you guys all have access to what we do, and you just heard Steve's. At the end of the day, it's very similar. You introduce yourself, hi David, David Morley's here. Hi David, how's it going today? And you kind of disarm them, and then you just tell them what you do. But you kind of hone in. You know how Steve talked about generating calls from homeowners that possibly are interested in listing their home or in the least interested in finding out how much it's worth. Could you handle five to 10 calls like that a day? And when you ask a question, I'll tell you, I learned so much when Sid and I were doing a lot of automotive work. The more questions you ask, the easier it gets because it gets the prospect to open up. But if you say, are you set for marketing this year? How's your marketing looking? They're going to tell you it's good and they're going to leave you off. You need to ask questions that get you the answers you want, not questions that are going to get you shown to the hang-up button. And everybody does it. You start with one script, and it's not a script. It's points that you want to get across. And as you you're going to do an introduction, you're going to tell what you do. And as you get better on making it specific about what you do for the realtor, and we'll get into this on next week's call, guys, so you can take some of that with you. The more specific you make it, the more interested they're going to be. If you say things like leads for realtors or realtor lead gen, oh my God. Yeah, it's a big turnoff.
They get a lot of calls.
Did you start, Steve, when you first started, you've been around the block. I know you've been in marketing 10 plus years. At the end of the day, you kind of know that when you're specific, people know you understand their business. Did you have to hone your message to kind of dial it in, or do you feel like you kind of hit it right out of the gate?
No, and I think that every conversation is going to be a little bit different. But when you use some terminology that's common in the industry, that's useful, right? When you talk to them about things that they're going through and actually experiencing, that's useful. So when we talk about, hey, would you be able to handle, I say 7 to 15 inbound calls a day from homeowners who are potentially interested in listing their home. Those are terms that are very specific to this industry that make tons of sense to them. They understand that. And they go, yeah, tell me how you do it. Well, essentially the same way that I just got you on the phone, we go ahead and drop voicemails right onto their cell phones, and we allow the interested parties to raise their hand by calling you back.
That's it. Well, Steve, let me do this. I mean, I think we, just our back and forth kind of opened up the floodgates. There's a bunch of good questions. Let me rewind this or scroll up, so to speak. All right. So Brian Morrow asked, Steve, you do the 2-number option where you kind of separate caller ID from the actual message number so you know whether they heard it or not, or do you do 1 number? And that was Brian's question.
1 number. That's the way that I do it. At the end of the day, it just makes sense, I think, for them to be on the phone with people either way. Keller Williams, I think, is the one that has that's a brokerage, a pretty big national brokerage, has the daily plan for their agents to talk to 20 new people that they don't know. So 20 people outside of their circle a day about buying or selling real estate. And that's their plan. Some of them go out and try to sit in a coffee shop and have a conversation with someone, or talk to the person at their local bakery or whatever. But sooner or later they run out. And the reality is that this is how they do that. Now, whether they've listened to the message or not, they're probably going to be a homeowner. Even if there's not, then the agent hopefully will go, oh, so you're renting then? And move into that. Did you know that it's actually less expensive to buy than it is to rent? And there's lots of programs out there to get you into a house for less than it costs to go out and rent another place. If they're doing the things that they should be doing, they should be talking to those people, because it goes from, you can double your numbers or something like that. And again, it's about having those conversations. It's not necessarily just that they raised their hand and called you back. Those are nice, don't get me wrong. But the reality is you're throwing so much potential away if you don't take those other calls.
Yeah, no, we realized it too. And One thing that we saw with our insurance clients, one of our end agencies, there was a lady named Debbie, and she would say, "Did you get my message?" And if you ask, once again, control the conversation with questions.
Yep.
Somebody introduces himself. "Hi, this is Brian Foltz. I'm with Remax. I just missed your call." "Hi, Brian. This is Brian Anderson with Voice Drops. Did you just get my message?" And now Brian's going to say, "No, I just saw I missed your call." And now you can kind of go from there. You just have to keep the conversation flowing and get that person to open up. As they open up, it all becomes apparent. You don't need a script. You'll know exactly what to say, but you don't want to paint yourself in a corner where the answer is going to be that they want to hang up on you. Because when you do that, that's when you lose the call. We've all done it. I heard Tracy she's down at the office today, and she was chuckling because we had a few of those this morning. We painted ourselves in a corner on a call or two. But the beauty of Voice Drops, guys, is it happens. And you know what? You just say next, kind of like Steve's point. Oh, they're not interested. They want to go golf 4 days a week. That's fine. They'll be the next guy in a few minutes, and it's okay.
Yep.
So, Steve, let's see. Brian Foltz said, what kind of percentages are you seeing on the fulfillment side? So whether it's yourself or one of the agents that you brought on board for your marketing firm, what kind of results, what are they typically seeing?
So the way that we do it is we set up the 125 drops a day. They typically will see between 7 and I would go higher and say their actual numbers can move into the 20s, callbacks. A number of them are people who haven't listened to it. But let's be honest, if it was $400 for 2 weeks and 25 people a day were calling you saying, "Please list my home," we'd be seriously underpricing ourselves.
Yeah, it'd be a disaster.
Yeah. And I let them know up front, hey, you're going to get calls from people who haven't necessarily heard it yet. Here's some scripting that works for it. Talk to them. Those people are just as much a potential buyer or seller as the other people who have heard it. And because you're not cold calling them, right, like them picking up the phone and having that conversation, they don't have that automatic response, right, of just recoiling when a salesperson calls them. They've called you. They give you time. That's been my experience. That's been all the agents that we've worked with. Their experience is that they'll give you some time. And remember that they're a homeowner in your target zip code. You're able to geo-farm digitally with a significantly higher open rate or response rate than you would if you're sending, every door direct.
All right. So Scott, let me tweak. Scott Carter, who we all know. Scott said,
What's up,
on
Scott?
average, there we go. On average, how long does a realtor client stay on board? What do you see in the burn rate, or do you feel like you need more time to give better data on that?
I would need more time. I know that. So for myself and the couple of agents that are in our team here that I'm working with personally, we are really excited about the results that we've seen ourselves, and have significant use of it, going on currently or planned in the next week or so, because again, it goes back to those market indicators, right? There's not enough houses on the market. Now's the time of year when it picks up. Even here in Minnesota, like there's snow on the ground. The post I sent out for Brian earlier showed a real feel of -30, and guess what? People are out looking at houses. It's that time of year. It's back.
That's crazy, man. It's hard for me to even comprehend. -30. I'm having a space heater on. I'm dressed in. I can't even imagine -30. I'm probably in my car driving south, is what I'm doing. But
Yeah, right.
let's see.
But that's the reality. Is it's that time of year. So you've got a lot of agents who are seeing other people in their offices start getting busy. Keep in mind that just because they're in the office with them doesn't mean anyone's sharing their secrets. And in fact, they're very secretive.
Steve,
they're funny about that.
One of the questions I saw, and I didn't see the name, but somebody said some of the zip codes may only have 1,000 records. They may not have a ton, like in the database that we have. What do you do on that when it's not a lot of homeowners in the zip code? And I guess the gentleman's question was, does this limit how you can market, or do you expand the zip codes? What do you do in that case?
Yeah, give them more zip codes. Say, hey, pick your top 3 zip codes.
Yeah, so if it's an area where the population is lower, guys, you amalgamate smaller areas and create a larger pool. And if it's a giant area like David, who was taunting us both, David's out in L.A. Perkins said it's 53. They're in the throes of deep winter in L.A.
That was him, huh?
Yeah, of course, right?
That's funny.
So David tried to do all of LA or all of one zip code, it's giant amounts of numbers.
Oh, yeah.
He has to break it up.
Yep.
So let's see. We talked about how many voice drops you're doing for the pricing. We went through your packaging and pricing. Here's a really good one from Paul. Paul said, do they pay you cash, Steve, or is it check, credit card, any or all of the above? What do you prefer on that?
Well, I mean, I think cash is king, right? If I'm near the person, I may very well, if they want to pay me in cash, take cash, because why not? But the reality is most of it is a credit card over the phone or through our billing system.
Yeah, I've yet to get cash, but I would agree. If somebody wanted to give me $500 to $600 in cash,
You want to throw me $500 bill?
yeah, I'm good to go.
We can be friends.
Oh,
So-
really? Man, Steve, this comes up all the time in the Facebook group. H.E. Fleischhauer asks, Steve, do you guarantee success or just charge for the drops with or without success?
So this is an interesting one. I had it come up one time where a guy says, well, can you guarantee I'm going to get a certain number of calls? I said, how many calls do you want me to guarantee? You know, that's just how the conversation was. I'll be super honest. He was a nice guy. But I don't know how well he understood what we were talking about. And I said, you know, he goes, you know, I'd like you to guarantee, like, if I don't get 20 in this 2-week time, that you'll give me my money back. And I said, done. You know, here's why. He'd been burned 100 times. That's why his objection was, even though we were talking about, you know, 7 to 15 calls a day times 6, right? So 7. Or 15 times 6 is going to put us at like 90 calls, right? And that's kind of still low. I underpromised the number of calls they're going to get back. And so I went ahead and did that, and I moved forward not thinking anything of it. I checked his first day's number of calls. It was 23. Like, I mean, we blew his mind. He was blown away by the number of calls. He wanted to slow it down. So, I mean, that gives you an idea. They've been promised all these things before. There's 10 people a day that call them and pitch them internet leads and all kinds of other things. So the reality is that they want them, they know it, and they, you know, some of them have been burned before. But the reality is, if they're willing to pick up the phone, we can make it ring.
Oh, good, very good one. Gene said, Steve, do you meet with agents belly to belly at any point of the sale, so face to face?
I have met with 2 of them. I've gone away from that and gone to just taking it over the phone. You know, I did it with the first couple people that I sold to. So, and what I've found is that if I just tie them down a little bit more in the conversation, there's no reason it can't be done without me having to go meet them. I mean, and I'll be super honest. I don't have the time or energy to go out for $250 to $350 in profit and actually meet with someone.
I like it. Here's another good question from H.E. Fleischhauer about exclusivity, Steve. One agent per zip code, or do you do some kind of exclusivity offer, maybe by charging a premium?
Well, so I go ahead and tell them that I'm not going to be sending drops for another agent while they're with me, right? So if they're with me for 2 weeks, they've got coverage for 2 weeks. They're with me for 10 months, they've got it for 10 months. They're with me for 6 years, that zip code is theirs for 6 years. But as soon as they stop paying, if they decide that they want to move in a different direction, then someone else is going to be allowed to farm that area. The reality is that they all know that there is no true exclusivity in most things that they do, right? Because every door direct will take a ton of people on that same route. I don't know if you know what that is. Every door direct is direct mail that the USPS does, where they drop it to everyone on a route. You know, the ability to get in front of people in other ways, whether it's Facebook or anything else, like everybody's marketing. Or if they're not, they should be. But this is something where we're not going to do any drops in the same zip code for any other agents as long as they're active with us. So does it limit the amount that you can do? Sure. I mean, I'm in Minneapolis, and that would limit us to like 100 agents probably. And then I'd have to pick up the phone and get a list probably from Scott or whoever to get agents in a different zip code or a different region, and I'd call them and I'd sell them, and I don't think that it's a real barrier.
All right, so here's are you doing full service for the realtor? You're doing the actual work or using the Voice Drops team to do the work on the drops, or do you let the realtors use the software and do it themselves under your branding?
I do not let the realtors do it themselves. I have had the request from my actual broker to be able to use it for his internal stuff with different agents to see if there's a way to make that work. He likes the idea of how he can not have to necessarily have a conversation with people who are big talkers and trying to disseminate information. So you can just drop it on their voicemail, which is funny. It's the reality is if you're trying to get a lot of information out to a lot of people, it can be useful for that as well. But aside from that, no, I wouldn't give anyone access to it. What we do is we send out a pin and they record their message, and we pull the list itself, through Voice Drops, and then we just put them together in the system. We have them pick their days and go from there. So I kind of push people into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I do that for two reasons. The first is that we know the data indicates Friday is not the best day to drop. I'm not a huge fan of getting up and working on that specific thing on Mondays. I go ahead and take care of the stuff that needs attention from the weekend. And so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is where we usher them into, and we set it up for 2 weeks and have a conversation with them afterwards to see if they want to keep going.
I like it. So how about
so for what it's worth, it's pretty hands-off, even though we're doing the work.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to ask you. Tom Mankey, who's also in Minneapolis area, he said maybe I should avoid Minneapolis, but he said, Steve, how much time does each client cost you or take to kind of deal with the client per se?
If you're not meeting them in person, it's a solid 30 minutes, 25 minutes from taking the first phone call to I've got a template to just send out an invoice. I've got an email template to request the information we need from them. I'd be surprised if I've got a half an hour into each one.
Yeah, good feedback. Now, do they record their messages? Do you do it, or do you have somebody else do it on the Clark asked on the messages?
Yeah, so in Minnesota, the agent has to do the recording. I don't know how that is nationally, but in Minnesota, the agent's it's got to be the agent, and they have to announce themselves from the broker. So.
And now I know that you prefer to go to the RVM when you're prospecting other realtors. You've been using like Scott services. On the consumer side, your drops are a mix, I imagine. This is kind of a question from Brian Foltz. Is it a mix of cell phone and landline? Is it just cell? Is it landline? Have you looked at that?
I'll be honest, it's on my list to add landlines because we've got just the ability to reach out to more people. But I just haven't. It's, we get good results the way that it is, and so I just haven't done it yet. I mean, that's not to say that we won't. We've talked about it, but
we just got a call back, Steve, maybe an hour ago from a lady in North Atlanta that had got a message yesterday. And I think my takeaway, you guys, on landlines is you won't get the rapid influx. You typically will see it spread out over a longer period of time. This was a lady, Juliana. She's in the kind of the Hispanic market. She's a successful Spanish-speaking agent targeting other Spanish consumers. And it was a really interesting conversation on how she could kind of go after that market. And I just think the only difference is RVMs will get you a faster call rate than landlines. But at the end of the day, a lot of the split test data that you saw in the course was a mix of the data. And when it was only RVM, we indicated that. But you can be successful either side of the house. It's a lot of it is the rate on how fast you get calls. Steve, what about Mike Barton? Good question. Mike said, do you find that agents want to see a website from you, or do they want other supplemental sales material? What material do you have, or do you recommend that somebody have to help close the deal, so to speak?
Well, and here's where sales skills or just talking to people skills come in. Um, I haven't had many people ask me for references. The ones that I have not been very good prospects in the first place. They're kind of on the edge of what I would consider for a customer. Because for what it's worth, I'll rule people out. I'll stop a conversation if it sounds like they tend to complain about everything. Then odds are good I probably can't make them happy regardless of what happens. And so I'll move on that. But the ones that I've had ask me that type of question of, hey, can you give me some references, or can you tell me what your website is? The reality is that you haven't done a good enough job of developing rapport. And I don't run into it very often, but when I do, they're generally people who are already very skeptical either way. And again, because of the volume of calls that we can generate, I just don't benefit from having that conversation or taking them on as a client.
Nice. And let's see, I'm looking for any that we might have missed, you guys. So, yeah, Kristen, let's see. Kristen we're working on finalizing some flyers, some little one-pagers, and we'll make all those available to you guys. Matter of fact, she sent some stuff over today, and Kristen, I'll get back to you as soon as this call ends. Man, I'm skimming them, Steve. Let's see. All right. Terry Palma said, he actually asked me, what are your thoughts about using a number with an extension attached, like 555-1234 extension 101? I mean, my thought is that it's going to reduce the number of calls, Terry, but by all means test it. By me just saying, hey, that's a bad idea, my gut tells me that it's going to reduce the calls just based on experience, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't test it. And what he's saying, you guys, is he'll have an extension. He'll use one callback number with different extensions.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, my gut is kind of the same as yours. That you're just going to get fewer phone calls. Who knows if there'll be better calls because people think it's a big company and okay, we can go work with them. But I mean, yeah. I personally wouldn't do it. I've got a system that works. I guess I don't know why I would change it.
Perfect. All right, guys. Anybody? Okay. Here's a good one from Mike Barton. He said, what time of day do you set the RVMs? What time of day do you send out your messages, I guess is what he's asking.
To agents or to homeowners or?
Either one. He didn't specify, so I'm guessing either one.
So for agents, if I'm going to do an agent run where I'm trying to pick up new clients, usually I have it planned the night before, but I'll be super honest, like things come up. So if I plan to do it at 10 o'clock, it might be 2 in the afternoon before I start running them, depending on what happens. I don't find that it's been a real bad thing either way. If you're going to do it for agents, I think earlier in the day is better because a lot of them are scheduling office time, and so they're going to be able to call you back right away and have some time. One of the things I've noticed is that later in the day, I'll still get the call back, but they're out doing things, and so they're just not as focused on having a conversation with you about generating new leads for them. I guess I hadn't thought of that until someone brought the question up, and I just thought about it now. But as for homeowners, for them to go out and get customers, it used to be that you wanted to wait until evening time, which is why everyone associated telemarketers with nighttime, because people only had landlines and they had to be at home to get it. But the reality is with cell phones, people are all over the place. Like they take calls at work, they take calls at lunch, they take calls all the time whenever they have time, and they make them when the topic is something they want to call about, right? So I tell my guys to do it at 10 o'clock, like my real estate agents, in the morning, again, because people are more likely to call back someone the same day than the next day, right? Because if I get to the next day and I haven't called you back, if it's important, you should probably leave me another one. There's so much stuff going on that I think people try to put, the day before behind them. And if it's someone they don't know, calling them about talking to them to try to sell them something, are they really going to call you back the next day? Probably not. So, yeah, I would say earlier in the morning is probably better. You get a hold of a lot of people right away, and then from there, throughout the day, you're going to get callbacks too. But I don't
Steve,
know.
here's one from Brian Morrow. And Brian, I haven't done this, just to answer your question, and I'll see if Steve or anybody else on the call. Brian's saying, Steve or anybody else, have you tried pulling for sale by owner homes, so houses that are being sold by owner, and doing drops to them looking for listings for agents? Have you done any of that kind of FSBO marketing, so to speak?
No, there are companies out there that do pull that data. The problem is that there becomes more of these nuanced issues with calling them. And remember, they are getting a lot of calls. So your message would really have to be on point. What separates you from someone else to be able to get that call back? Not to say that it wouldn't work, but generally what I've found from agents who are doing the expireds and the FSBOs is that they're having to call and call and call and call and call. They're hitting them 10 times before these people are finally deciding to go that route. You have to imagine that even though the statistics show that you probably shouldn't try to sell your house yourself, you save the 6% listing fee, but homes sold by agents go for like 13% more. So you get the built-in benefit of someone who understands all the legal end of everything that has to take place, the timelines that have to take place, and everything with it. What closing entails, what inspections have to be done, and all that fun stuff. And you're actually going to net more on average. So yes, we all know that, or well, many agents know that. The problem is that person doesn't want to pay $16,000 out of pocket to sell their house. So,
All right. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the whole reason they're doing the FSBO. And honestly, those are more likely to get a little upset that you're even marketing to them.
Yeah. So, again, not that you can't get some, but I don't know that would be the best place for an agent to spend their time.
Let me give you two. We're going to do two more, you guys, and wrap up. There's a bunch of good ones, and if we don't get to yours, just go ahead and post in the group, and we can all talk about it. So it's just for the interest of time, that's all. Here's a good one from Mike Barton. I'm guessing the answer is no, but I'm intrigued to ask you this, Steve. Do you attempt to drop multiple messages to the same list for the same agent? So you mean the same consumers, Mike, multiple different messages to get a call back at the same time?
So, we haven't done it yet. We have certainly considered it. We have certainly talked about it. I intend to do it in my personal geographic area. So for what it's worth, I've got a list of homeowners in my city that I intend to hit twice a month in 2017. I assume that I'm going to have a lot of people at some point say, "Hey, listen, we're just not interested." But I also know that the more times you put a message out to somebody, the more often, or the more people are going to call you back. So I'm definitely interested in doing it. I just haven't yet. I think you can do that. That's another solution, I think, to people who say, "Hey, I don't have enough data in my zip code." If you run it, that's where make sure you've got a tracking number, because then you can just pull those numbers off the list and rerun it. So the people who called back, you take them off the list and you rerun it again with a second message. It's like retargeting, really, right? You're getting back in front of people.
We actually, I think of it the same way. Now, when I meant same time, I meant like the same day or next day. We hit some today that we had done a week ago.
Gotcha.
So, we've done that. Now, all right, let's end with this, you guys, and let me find it. Oh, geez. Okay, here it is. It was Lowell Smoker. How often do you plan to drop either to the same group of realtors, to solicit clients, or to the same consumers for one of your customers? How often are you how often would you hit those numbers, I guess, is Lowell's question.
Um, so the way that I look at it is if I drop 100 a day for real estate agents, that keeps me super busy. And I don't do it every day. Again, I probably should, but I don't. Um, but so the idea is there's like 2,500 of them on my list, something like that. So that's a month's worth. And do I think I can do it again the next month? Heck yeah. Um, that's as quick as I would probably try to do it myself. I don't think that there's a reason that you couldn't do it more often because again, you got to remember. Can you remember the telemarketer that called you in the middle of December? I don't. I get them. I get 5 a day. They just don't stand out to me. And so if you go out a couple weeks, they may very well also have forgotten that the call even came in, and now they're in a mindset where they can call you back, or they have some interest. Um, as for consumers, I don't see why they couldn't be talked to every month. I mean, the reality is the market is changing monthly. Some would say faster than that. We keep weekly data on record. Our MLS does, or our realtors organization. And it changes. Some changes can take place relatively quickly. You're going to see that the market is always moving. That's something I'm paying more attention to, obviously, that I've been licensed. But you can legitimately get them good information or new information from month to month. And so again, that's where you talk to people about being able to geographically farm their area on a 3 or 6 month basis, right? Because most people know that they got to start out. A lot of people, when they do the direct mail, a lot of real estate agents will start out and do one every week for the first month. They're trying to get that repetition in there so people see them, and then they switch out to every other week, and then to monthly or something. They try to stay in front of their people, and I say their people, the neighborhood or the zip code they chose. And so that's you're able to do that, except you get just significantly higher callback rates or response rates.
I mean, Steve kind of hit them all. Who had a question that we missed? And we'll sneak one last one in before we end this thing. Who's missing? Did you put one in? There was a lot of stuff scrolling, and Vanessa wasn't here early. Lisa Curry. Let me find it, Lisa. I didn't see yours. Hang on. Let's see.
What's up, Lisa?
Let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, Lisa, and I answered. You might not have heard this one. So next week we're doing a call. Steve, she mentioned. I know Steve has scripts that you give your agents. This is interesting. So the agents that you land as clients on how to handle the phone calls, and she said, "Do we have something similar?" And so, Lisa, we're actually kind of doing that on next week's call. And we'll have, I wouldn't call it scripts as much as key points. Because, you can't script a call like that. And when you try to, it usually falls short. You just want to give them the hot points. And like one of the lessons I learned, don't talk about realtor lead gen, or you're gonna get to a hang up as fast as you've ever seen. So we'll share all that with you guys so you have it. All right, here's our last one. David Morley, and Steve's going to have fun with this one. Because David, I would have thought the same thing, actually, until Steve showed us up here. Are southern states best for prospecting rather than northern, given that winter temps in the north are pretty cold right now? So, Steve, I suspect you have a strong opinion on this one.
Well, I mean, here's kind of the deal, right? So, the specific city that I'm in, right, Minneapolis, the suburb I'm in is Lakeville. They had like 1,200 or 1,300 homes sell last year. And even in November and December, like people were closing deals. It's always happening. Does it slow down a little bit? Sure. That to me spells opportunity, right? You got some agents that are happy. They're ready. I see a bunch of them show up in my Facebook feed from some local agents that, they're in Puerto Vallarta. So it's a great time for people to go out and pick up market share. The reality is that people move at all times of the year. Again, it does slow down during the school year, but I think it's good all year round. So if you're in a southern place, have a conversation with people around you in your geographic area. I don't think it hurts to start local. There's probably some upside. You'll go ahead and be able to have conversations with people, developing rapport, talking about something going on in the city or the weather or whatever. I know some of you guys in the South don't talk about the weather, but we do up here. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't think that being in the North matters. There are real estate agents up here. There are houses getting sold, and the reality is you can continue to build your business year round. Um, if all you're doing is just farming, that's fine. It works. From an agent's perspective, I mean. Um, so no, I don't think there's any reason not to market in the winter.
I love it. Funny enough, today's AJC, the newspaper here in Atlanta, we're looking at this today, Steve, coming up for the weekend. Snowfall potential, which could equal maybe a quarter to a half inch, and probably will shut down part of the state, I suspect.
Yeah. I got a funny story about this, actually.
This is coming. So they've named the winter storm already, and potentially we could see a quarter half inch.
We were headed down to Orlando, and Atlanta's a hub, so we were headed down to Orlando a couple years back. We got 18 inches of snow in like 6 hours, and we were ready to fly out of Minneapolis, but Atlanta got half an inch of snow, and they shut the plane down.
I know it, man. It happens. It's
Yep.
the craziest thing. I was in LaGuardia 2 or 3 years ago flying back. Atlanta had that snowgeddon with the ice, and everything was shut down. When I landed, my wife couldn't get me. She had dropped me off, and all the roads were closed. I rented a minivan at the airport, and to go the 20 miles to my house from the airport took 3 hours. And I rented a vehicle, paid through the nose just because I didn't want to sleep at the airport. I wanted to get home. I had to go like 5, 10 miles an hour to do it, but I did it and made it home. So yeah, weather's always hot, even when it's cold. So with that being said, you guys, everybody, I want to thank Steve for taking his time and being here, and your questions help make this call. All of you, every question, there's no bad one. If we didn't get to yours, post it in the group so we can get some discussion going, because it was probably a good question. We either ran out of time or I grouped them together with somebody similar. So thanks everybody for being here. But Steve, especially to you and taking time from your business and your family today, thanks a lot for coming on the call with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always fun.
No, awesome. Well, listen, everybody, we'll see you guys soon. Next week, I think you're going to like it. It'll play to what Lisa asked. And Steve, thanks a million, and we will talk to you guys very soon. See you later.
Take care.
Bye.